For a whole generation of us, the letters PES, they meant something. It wasn't just a video game. It was a ritual, it was bragging rights, it was the absolute king of digital football. But that king is long gone, so let's get into it. This is the story of how the most beloved football franchise in gaming history completely lost its crown.
I mean, it's honestly hard to overstate just how massive this series was. If you grew up in the 2000s, you know what I'm talking about. You remember the sound, the feel of the ball, the absolute joy of scoring a screamer with a player whose name was, well, it was almost right. This wasn't just a game you played after school. For so many of us, it was a way of life.
So how does that happen? How does a franchise with a gameplay formula that many people still say is the best ever end up as a free-to-play game that became a total joke on the internet? That's the big question, and that's the mystery we are going to unravel right now.
Okay, so before we can understand the fall, you really have to understand the glory days. Back in the early 2000s, Pro Evolution Soccer, or PES, it just felt different. It wasn't about the flashy menus or having every single official license. It was all about the feel.
And this, right here, is the absolute core of it all, what fans called the soul of the game. Every pass you made had weight. Every shot felt like you truly earned it. The ball behaved like a real ball. It wasn't just glued to a player's feet. This game taught an entire generation what a true football simulation could be. And because they were so obsessed with that pure gameplay, it led to this incredible period of total dominance. From the early to mid-2000s, Konami was just on fire. They simply could not miss, dropping a series of games that are now considered absolute legends.
And what a run it was! PES 3 was when people started calling it a masterpiece. PES 4 brought in online play, which was a massive, massive deal at the time. PES 5, well, people will still argue it's the most perfectly balanced football game ever made. And then there was PES 6, a game so beloved that, as you're about to see, it basically refuses to die.
But as we all know, nothing lasts forever. The era of the PlayStation 2 was coming to an end, and a whole new generation of consoles was on the horizon. And with that new technology came the very first crack in the PES empire. Now, everyone expected Konami to just take that legendary gameplay and make it look even better with all that new power. Instead, they decided to rebuild the entire game engine from scratch. The result? It was an absolute disaster, and it swung the door wide open for their biggest rival.
And this is the exact moment the tide turned. While PES 2008 felt like a huge step backwards, it was buggy, unfinished, a mess, EA Sports came out with a polished, fully licensed FIFA. And it also happened to have a brand new mode called Ultimate Team, a mode that would go on to generate billions of dollars and change sports gaming forever.
After that huge stumble, PES spent the next decade just trying to play catch-up. Now, there were some good years in there, for sure. Games like PES 2013 and 2019 showed flashes of that old magic, but it was all leading up to one final catastrophic decision. So Konami announced they were actually skipping a yearly release to build something brand new, something revolutionary. And the fan base, the loyal ones who had stuck with them for years, they let themselves hope one last time. This was it. This was going to be the great comeback.
It wasn't a comeback. The new game, rebranded as eFootball and released for free, was an unmitigated catastrophe. It was broken on a fundamental level, and all that hope in the community it turned to despair, almost overnight. 0.6. That score isn't just bad, it's historically bad. We're talking one of the worst-rated games ever. It became this perfect symbol of just how far the franchise had fallen, from the undisputed king to the literal bottom of the barrel. And you can see why the fans felt so betrayed. The graphics were a nightmare, the kind of stuff memes are made of. The bugs were so bad they were almost funny, and there was hardly anything to do in the game. But the worst part, the real betrayal, it felt nothing like PES. The soul was gone. It felt like a cheap mobile game.
So here's the crucial thing to understand. The eFootball disaster didn't just happen out of the blue. It was the final symptom of a decade's worth of problems. So let's do a little autopsy here and break down the fatal mistakes that led to this point.
The whole decline really boils down to 5 key areas. They were losing the battle for official licenses, their marketing was practically non-existent, they had no answer for FIFA's money-making machine, their online experience was always a technical mess, and it was just one poor strategic choice after another from the top.
And this really shows you the core problem. PES was fighting a war it just couldn't win. While FIFA had all the official teams, was making billions from Ultimate Team and advertising everywhere you looked, PES was stuck with fake names like Man Red, a laggy online experience,
and was basically invisible in the market. Passion alone just couldn't compete with that kind of financial firepower.
But here's where the story takes a really fascinating turn. Because while the official franchise might be a shadow of what it once was, the spirit of Pro Evolution Soccer is far from dead. In fact, it's thriving. Just not where you'd expect. That's right, these incredibly dedicated fans are releasing their own patches for the old games, like PES 6, updating them with modern teams, modern kits, modern players. They're the ones keeping the soul of the game alive, because they believe in that classic gameplay more than they believe in the new official product. It's amazing.
So, what can we learn from this whole tragic story? Well, the fall of PES is this powerful lesson that having amazing gameplay, it just isn't enough to survive. You need marketing, you need good online infrastructure, and maybe most important of all, you absolutely cannot betray the trust of the community that built you from the ground up.
Ultimately, this story matters because for so many people, PES was more than just some product you buy. It was the source of countless late nights, those fierce rivalries with your friends, and the pure joy of a perfectly played through ball. For a lot of us, it was a part of growing up. And that leaves us with the one big question. In an industry that's now dominated by microtransactions and massive budgets, is there still room for a football game that's focused purely on simulation, on depth, and on that intangible feeling of soul? We can only hope so.